up guys, ATCZ here, welcome back to Yugioh deck of the day. Today we have the Jinzo deck that got new support from the Rage of Ra set. This deck, I think, got probably the most viable support out of all three decks because it actually had tools to win even before, while Ra and Mech Lords were not actually decks beforehand. This deck can somehow win against control decks because this is what it's meant to do, and by building the deck correctly, you can win against good monsters and combo decks as well. So in this video, I'm going to show you the build that I've come up with. It doesn't utilize anything like Fiber, Dragoon. I've mentioned before that I just don't like including these cards in fun decks because they're meant to be different, they're meant to have fun with, so it's not fun when you do everything that pretty much every other deck does. So if you enjoyed this video guys, please give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming videos, and now let's get to the deck profile. So starting off with one of the most nostalgic monsters in the game, we have 3 copies of Jinzo. This card single-handedly wins against decks like Altergeist, against Subterror. If they cannot deal with it fast enough, they won't be able to use most of their deck, and you're going to get the advantage you need in order to win. It stops only traps on the field, which is relevant because I'm playing in small engine in the deck that could contradict with it, but it doesn't, just because the card specifically states that it negates traps on the field, so traps in the grave will still be able to use its effect. And it being a level 6 is actually important because of some cards that play in the extra deck, and also a new card we got, not in the Rage of Ra set, but just a few days before that. Next up, we have 3 copies of Jinzo the Menacing Machine. This card is really good. If a trap is on the field or in the grave, you can special summon from your hand. If you do it becomes level 6, so you can overlay with it. And also during the main phase, it's a quick effect. You can tribute it, special summon a Jinzo from your hand or grave, and then destroy all trap cards your opponent controls. And you have to reveal them if they're set, see if they're traps actually, so it's not like it destroys only face up. If they're set, you can just reveal them, so it's a really, really good card. The engine I'm playing in the deck also helps this card as well because you need to have a trap on the field or in the grave in order to summon it, and if you're going first, then there won't be any traps on the field, so you need to get a trap in the grave in order to special summon this card from your hand. Next up, we have 3 Psycho Bounder. This is the starter of the deck. If it's summoned, you can add a Jinzo or one spell trap that lists Jinzo. And also, if in damage calculation, if another monster you control is attacked, you can destroy both the attacking monster and this card, so it's kind of similar to the old Reflect Bounder that kind of did damage, but instead of doing damage, it actually destroys the cards. These cards are retrains of cards Esperoba used in the anime, so I really like the fact that Konami gives us back nostalgic monsters with new improved effects while keeping the monsters very similar. The next one is probably the same. It's Psycho Giga Cyber. This is a retrain of the Fiend Mega Cyber. Then this card, I think that people are doing wrong by playing 1 copy of this card. I max out on it because I think it's a really, really good card going second. So if your opponent has more spell and traps than you do, and even if they're not playing like a super control deck, even if you're playing cards like Dragon Link or stuff, they have a field spell usually on the field, or maybe World Legacy Guard Dragon, so you can special summon this card even if you're not playing against controls. And if this card attacks an opponent's effect monster, keep that in mind, it says effect monster, but I don't think that's super relevant because you're not going to be attacking normal monsters most of the time. And if you control a Jinzo, you can tribute this card and place that monster in the spell and trap zone as a face-up trap. So not only do you get rid of a monster, but you also give them a trap card to make use of the Menacing Jinzo and all your other effects. So I think playing 3 Giga Cyber is actually really good because this deck mainly wants to go second. Going first, it doesn't do anything super crazy if you're not running Dragoon. So if you're going second, you just want to try to clear your opponent's board, and if they're playing a combo deck, it's much more difficult, which is why I've included cards that help you deal with monsters, and Giga Cyber is actually one of those cards. Next up, we have 3 Jinzo Ejector. This is an old card, but it finally sees some play because it wasn't that good back then. It's a normal summon that you can tribute to add a Jinzo, and then depending on how many traps your opponent has, you reveal their set, and depending on how many traps your opponent has, you spell summon that many Jinzos from your hand. So before, you were relying on your opponent to use this card because if they're not playing a trap deck, it specifically states traps. It doesn't state any spells and traps. So if they're not playing any traps, its effect is practically useless. You just add a Jinzo and that's it. But now there are ways to make your opponent's monsters traps, and this is why I think Giga Cyber is so good. So you can make use of this card to special summon multiple Jinzos from your hand. Next up, we play 2 copies of Summoner Monk, just because I think you need just a little bit more, especially to get your Psycho Bounder, because it searches you all your spells and traps. So I think not 2 Summoner Monk, just perfectly fine to give you a little bit more steam for the deck. For the hand traps, play 3 Ash Blossom and 3 Effect Veiler. I'm not running Impermanence in this deck for obvious reasons, because if you have Jinzo on the field and you have Impermanence, you will not be able to use it, and your opponent will be able to do all their plays. So I think these two are perfectly fine. You can run Ogre if you want, you can run Gamma if you want. These are just two really good cards, but I think these two are the most generic to play in any deck. You can adapt depending on the format of your locals or on what you're playing against. Now let's go to the spells. We have 3 copies of Law of the Cosmos. This is one of the new cards, and this basically gives your opponents a choice, but no matter what they choose, you're going to plus. So they either set a trap from their deck or the hand to the field, and then you can special summon a Jinzo from your deck. Now, if they don't choose to do this, you can add a Jinzo or one monster that lists Jinzo from your deck to your hand. So either they will set a trap and give you the fodder you need in order to do your plays, or you will get to send something like a Psycho Bounder, and that's pretty much what you need to get started, or you can add your Giga Cyber if you want to out something. So this card is really good no matter what your opponent chooses to do. Next up, we have 3 copies of Cyber Energy Sock. This is a disruption for the deck that is actually very much needed because it cannot run traps, and if you want to disrupt your opponent, you will either have to rely fully on hand traps, but this card is really good because it's a quick play, and if you control Jinzo, you destroy a card on the field, and if it was a trap, you can either negate the effect of one face-up card on the field until the end of the turn, or boost all your Jinzo by 800, which is usually going to be the first part of the effect because you can get 2 cards in the price of 1, and because it's a quick play, it's a disruption, so it's a really, really good card, and it's searchable, of course. Next up, we play 3 copies of Foolish Burial Goods. This card is really good because I play a certain trap in the deck that not only facilitates the menacing Jinzo, but also gives you an actual plus. You can try to guess what it is. I think it's pretty obvious, but I'm going to show you once I get to the traps, which is the only trap I play anyway. Next up, we play 3 Dark Ruler No More. Like I said, this is mostly a going second deck, and it struggles against combo decks, so you need to have a way to deal with their effect monsters and then try to get rid of them by over-attacking over them or using Giga Cyber's effect. Same logic with Super Poly. You need to get rid of their monsters and get another monster for your own. And one Mind Control because the deck has synergy with a certain extra deck monster that you play because the deck is a level 6 base deck. So this will give you not only get rid of one of your opponent's monster, but also give you a follow-up play. And this also fits into the theme of Vesparoba because he was using cards like Mind Control and Break Control. So I think it's really cool to have this card in the deck and actually be very useful. And the only trap I play in the deck is one Orchest Crescendo. This card is so good in this deck because of the 2 reasons I mentioned, but I'm going to mention them again. Not only can you get a trap in the grave first turn with Foolish Burial Goods to be able to special summon your Menacing Machine, but also you can banish this card to add any Dark Machine from your deck to your hand. And that's all your monsters for the Jinzo archetype except Psycho Bounder because it's a light, unfortunately, and it locks you into Dark Machine to special summoning Dark Machines for the entire turn. But Psycho Bounder is usually the one you're normal summoning unless you're using Summoner Monk, which won't be that often. And the restriction doesn't really bother you unless you have a Super Poly, but you don't have to use Crescendo the turn you send it to the grave immediately. You can just leave it in the grave and special summon your Menacing Jinzo and use it during your opponent's turn to get a search. But you can search your Giga Cyber, you can search your Jector, you can search any of your Jinzos. I think this card is really good and helps the deck speed up by a lot. Now for the extra deck, first we have the new monster that came out in Dragons of Legends as a promo, which is Jinzo Layered. This card is a Jinzo card because it requires 2 level 6 monsters, and you can attach material to target a face-up monster your opponent controls. You'll take control of it till the end phase, so it fits with the Esperoba theme. You take control of our monsters, but it cannot activate its effect or declare an attack, but you can link it away. And if a trap is on the field, you can tribute 1 monster and destroy 1 face-up card on the field. So if you've made your opponent have a trap by using the effect of Giga Cyber, you can tribute the monster you steal and then destroy another card. So this is why this card is really, really good. Next up, we have the reason Mind Control is so good in this deck, Dhampir Vampire Sheridan. This requires level 6 monsters, but it has a cool effect that states that if you're using a monster that's owned by your opponent to Xyz summon this, you can treat that monster as a level 6. So no matter what kind of level monster you steal, it can be used with Xyz or Lynx, unfortunately, because they don't have levels. But if you steal any level monster, so let's say you you use a Savage, you bait Savage's effect, then you take it with a Mind Control, then you can treat it as a level 6 to overlay into this card with any of your level 6 monsters. So you can get rid of one monster your opponent controls this way instead of linking it away and get a better effect because you can detach a material to target the card your opponent controls. It doesn't destroy it, it sends it to the grave, which is really good. And if a monster card is sent from the field to the grave, then you can just take it away. You can detach a material from this card to special summon one of those monsters. So you can steal more monsters this way. So this fits with a archetype very, very good. Next up, we have 1 Dragulus, a Vampiric Dragon, another really good monster. You can flip face down monsters from the extra deck, and if it's destroyed by a card effect or banished, it just special summons them face down defense. And if it's flipped, you send 1 card from the field to the grave. So it's a resilient monster that can help you clear boards. 1 Photon Strike Bouncer in case you need some negation, or if your opponent has 1,000 life points and you special this on the field, they will not be able to use any monster effect, because if they do, you will just negate it and then deal 1,000 damage per game, so that's good. 1 Utopia Beyond. This card helps you clear boards. Once it's summoned, it turns all monsters your opponent controls attacking to 0, so that's a good monster to summon with 2 level 6 monsters. I do play some rank 4s in the deck, mainly because of Summoner Monk, because if I summon my Bounder and I don't want to do it for anything else, or if I summon a Jector and I don't tribute it for whatever reason, I can go into rank 4 monsters. We play 1 Abyss Dweller, pretty standard, 1 Maguska for the decks that Dweller cannot deal with, and 1 Tornado Dragon because you make your opponent set cards, so if they ever deal with Jinzo, you need to have something on the field to make sure that they don't use the traps you gave them, because if they said something with Law of the Cosmos that it's really good and they get rid of your Jinzo with something like a Melusik, then you need to make sure that those traps are not going to be used. So if you have a Jinzo and a Tornado Dagger on the field, you can make sure those cards will never get a result. Next up, we have the Super Poly targets. So we have 1 Starving Venom from the Dark Monsters, 1 Dragostapelia for any of those fusion decks, mainly Pendulums, 1 Thrift for all those hardcore dark decks that get a lot of monsters on the field, 1 Earth Golem for decks like Marinces or Salamangreat, it's a better Violet Chimera because it's more generic, and 1 Mud Dragon for those different monsters that hold the same type but different attributes. Actually, no, it's the reverse. Same attribute, different type. I always get this wrong. Anyway, for the Link monsters, we play 1 Phoenix because same logic with your Tornado Dragon. You need to get rid of some back row because if you cannot get access to your Menacing Jinzo, then you will not be able to destroy all those set cards. So you just need something to get rid of it. And 1 Unicorn to Link Climb and also get rid of another card. And if you draw your Orcus Crescendo, these 2 cards are actually the ones that will get it out of your hand. Also, Super Poly is a way to get it, so it's not like a total brick if you actually draw it. You do have ways to send to the grave. So yeah, that's the deck, guys. Hope you guys enjoyed it. It's a really fun deck, very nostalgic deck. They are getting pretty much to give us all the good old nostalgic monsters, playable archetypes. We've had the Wind Dragon of Ra, we've had the Jinzo. They're going to give us many more, and soon we'll have all the dual monsters, the classic ones, to be actual decks. We start with Dark Magician and Blue Eyes, and now we're getting one by one all of them. So if you have any suggestions for the deck, please comment down below. I would like to see if there are any kind of text that I missed, anything that I haven't thought of that will make the deck really good. And if you enjoyed this video, please give it a thumbs up. It helps us a lot with the YouTube algorithm. Subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming videos, and we'll see you next time.